can go ahead and get started. So like Angela was saying, we'll talk about the customer journeys today. I'm going to focus mostly on what merchandising supports overall, and talk a little bit about how kind of the full breadth of functionality that we have in our solutions, starting with some of the key configurations that you'll want to be aware of for your implementations. Talk a little bit about some of the integrations that we have around foundation and pricing, inventory information, and then the customer journeys and for fulfillment and returns that are supported. And then I'll also talk about how that plays with some of our other Oracle retail solutions. But I wanted to cover kind of more of a merchandising centric view first, because I know that a lot of your implementations may not have all of our solutions. So I wanted to make sure you had a good understanding of what merchandising supports. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so starting with some of the key configurations, there's a number of system options that I want to make sure that you're all aware of. Some of these are newer and have been added in more recent cloud releases, so may be new to everyone. The first one is not new. It is just a flag that says whether or not you're integrated with an order management solution. And I wanted to make sure I called this one out because I think there has been some confusion thinking that it would only be set to yes if you are integrated with the Oracle Retail Order Management solution. But actually, you'll want to set that to yes if you're integrated with any order management solution. If it's set to no, then that means that you're manually creating customer order transfers and customer order purchase orders and merchandising, which I would guess for most implementations wouldn't be the way you'd want to work. The next two are newer configurations that have been added. One is for accounting for customer returns, and the other one is for customer fulfillments. And basically what these both allow you to do is determine who gets credit for either the sale or the return when it occurs. So unlike a typical sale in the store, where the store that's selling it is also where the merchandise is located, a customer order may be placed in another store or on a website, but then fulfilled through one of a retailer's physical stores. Or it could be also, of course, fulfilled from a warehouse or a supplier. And we've heard requirements from customers about wanting to have more control over determining which location gets the credit for the sale. And so these system parameters allow you to control that, as well as who gets credit for the return. So the default behavior would be either the return location or the fulfillment location, or the location that's shipping the goods or having the customer pick up the goods. But you can also change it to have the original location for a return be where the return gets booked against in the stock ledger, or the order location, or so where the order was placed, whether that was on a website, in another store, or whatever, that's the location that would get credit for that sale. And we handle the difference in financials on the back end by writing book transfer transactions to Trandata. Another key system parameter is the retain customer information option. It's just a yes or no option. And this will determine whether or not when customer orders are sent, merchandising will save the customer details, so the address, the customer name, that type of thing, with the order. And generally the flow would be that we would save that so that we could pass it along down to the warehouse or to the supplier for in order so that they know where to ship the goods. But if your local restrictions prevent you from being able to save that data within merchandising because of privacy concerns, you can set that to no, but then you'll have to have another method of getting that customer information to either the warehouse or the supplier related to that order. In that case, we would just keep the customer ID number, so that could be used as a cross-reference. One note, if you were in the session last week when we talked about WMS integration, this is something that does need to be set to yes when you're integrating with WMS Cloud or Logfire. Reserve customer orders on receipt is another one that was just added in our most recent cloud release. And this is used for what we call two-leg two-legged fulfillments. So if a warehouse, for example, is sending goods to a physical store and then the customer is going to pick it up in the store, that first leg is the warehouse to store shipment, and then the second leg is the customer pickup. So previously, we would have expected two customer or fulfillment orders to come down from order management to handle the second leg, the first and second leg reservations in each location. But with setting this to yes, now you can automatically reserve the goods as soon as they're received into the store and not require a second fulfillment order to do that. Back order, returnable, and refundable are also new system options, but they actually relate to item loc trait options that we've had for some time within merchandising. And we added system options here to be a default. So item loc traits aren't something that necessarily are always set up for every item, but especially with the importance of knowing if something can be back ordered, and really the returnable and refundable flags as well. We wanted to have a way that, since most items probably are returnable, refundable, and may or may not be back orderable, this allows you to control that a little bit more at the system level, and then you can just manage the exceptions at the item location level. Okay. Next. And then just a couple more. So published store available to sell updates. One of the things that we'll be talking about in the upcoming slides is our inventory integration. For merchandising, we obviously have both warehouse and store inventory details that we could share with an order management solution to help with customer order fulfillment. But if you are implementing with SIM or SIOX at your customer, you may want to, or probably want to, get the store inventory information from that solution instead. So this is just a way to toggle that real-time update of inventory information related to stores off when you're implementing both solutions together. And then the validate availability for customer orders flag is something that we added for support for some customers. If, for example, if you maybe are not doing sales updates very frequently to your to merchandising from your point of sale, or have other delays in getting inventory updates coming in, and have a different way of wanting to validate, or just a different process in the warehouse, for example, for managing your customer orders, you can turn off the validation of customer orders for customer orders, and then merchandising will take them in no matter what and pass them along to the warehouse for fulfillment without doing that validation. And then the last one is just a parameter related to purging older customer orders. So for most of our customer orders that we have in merchandising, they'd be tied to either a transfer or a purchase order, and they get removed from the system when those orders or transfers are removed. But for orders that are fulfilled from store inventory that don't have a transfer tied to them, they don't really have any other type of criteria for removal. So there's a system option that's set to determine how long those are retained. Okay. So then I just wanted to cover a few configurations at the item and location, fulfillment locations. There's obviously a lot of additional attributes at each of these levels, but just wanted to call out a few things to be aware of. For items, we do have a few attributes at the item level that may be helpful, and you may want to consider integrating to order management or your order capture solution for your customer. So product classification, which can be used to determine if the item is heavy or it's got any kind of toxic materials, so it can't be packed with other items in the same box. Whether the item is eligible for gift wrapping, if it has to ship alone, if it's perishable. We also have added an integration for translated item descriptions. So if you have multiple translations or languages that you want to capture your item descriptions in and then publish out to have available on your website, that integration is available. We also have a launch date. I think this is actually an item location level attribute, but you can track when a product is launched, which again might be helpful on our website. And then related items. So this is allowing you to create relationships between items for either cross-selling, upselling, or substitution. And the substitution of items is used by SIM and SIOX in the store when they're doing fulfillment. For stores, some of the key configurations are the number one, I guess, is the stock holding flag. So for most of your physical store locations, you're going to set that to yes, it's stock holding. But merchandising does expect to have at least one, it can be multiple, but at least one non-stock holding company store that's used to represent the website. And you'll see how that comes into play in some of the flows we'll walk through here in a minute. There's also flags to determine whether that's a store is a customer order location or if it can ship customer orders. So those two flags come into play also in terms of inventory information that's shared to order management. So only locations that are flagged as a customer order location will merchandising send inventory information to order management. And then the expectation is that order management would use that customer shipping location to determine whether or not that's a valid shipping location for shipping customer orders, or maybe it's only for pickup. Currency obviously is important for stores. I think this is important if you have working with a customer who has a website that has multiple different currencies that they accept. We do require all the sales transactions and things like that coming in to be in the currency of the store, similar to a physical store location. So that may be a factor that drives having more than one non-stock holding store to represent the website. There's also a channel associated with the store, which relates to how it interacts with the warehouse, especially if you're working at the physical warehouse level with your order management solution. It helps to determine which pools of inventory are part of that channel. And then store type, there's two different store types that merchandising supports, either a company location or a franchise location. And the franchise location can be used to fulfill customer orders, but only for stock holding locations. Okay. Warehouse has similar, they have a customer order location flag as well. So again, that's used in the same way that the parameter is used for the store. So it determines what inventory is shared. So you may have multiple virtual warehouses within one physical, but maybe only one of them is designated as customer order fulfillment inventory. So only that virtual location would be flagged as a customer order location. I mentioned channel already, and then just again, the physical versus virtual warehouse. So merchandising can support integration with order management at either the physical or the virtual level. Certainly would recommend using virtual, and that's what we use in our integration with order management and order broker internally. But if at all possible, but if that's not how your solutions work, or you think that would cause issues, you can use the physical warehouse level as well. And then lastly, at the store or the supplier level, if you're doing any fulfillment for like drop ship from your supplier directly to customers, or able to place customer specific orders coming into the store for pickup, for example, it's important that the org unit for your supplier matches the org unit for the store, or the order will get rejected coming into merchandising. And then at the item supplier level or item supplier country level, you need to make sure that at item supplier level, the direct ship indicator for that item is set to yes if you want to have the item be eligible to be shipped directly to from the supplier to the customer. And then just calling out dimensions and lead times as maybe some additional pieces of information that would be useful to provide to order management or the website in terms of helping to determine packing, maybe freight charges, and also what to promise to the customer in terms of when to expect the item. So now I'm going to get into the integrations a bit. starting with foundation and price. So similar to what we integrate with a number of solutions, merchandising would be responsible in an implementation with integrating items, suppliers, locations, all the typical item attribution to order management and order capture. Now you could choose to send some of our customers do choose to send information from another solution, like a content management solution, to order capture, and that's fine as well. But we do have integration, and it can support that type of integration to an outside solution. And then pricing information, any kind of price changes we would expect to be sent from the pricing cloud service, including regular price changes, clearances, and promotional offers. So in a lot of ways, the order management, order capture kind of are similar to a point of sale, where they're getting a lot of that same type of information from merchandising and pricing. The next, we'll talk about inventory availability. So this is an area that we've really changed a lot in recent releases. We have basically two different feeds of inventory. One is current available, and one is future available. So current available is basically what's available right now. And we have this integration in two different ways. One is a bulk load for both store and warehouse, and that's intended to be used to kind of initially seed order management with the kind of initial inventory positions. That, as I mentioned before, does include only customer order locations in that feed. And then we also have a real-time update available via the RIB, that every time a change in available inventory position occurs, it will send an update to order management. And there's actually two RIB messages for that. One is for warehouses and one is for stores. And you can turn off, or actually it might be just one RIB message, but you can configure it to say whether it's for both warehouses and stores, or just warehouses, based on that system option I mentioned earlier. So that's what would be responsible for keeping order management updated in real time. And then future available is also included. That's going to send on order and receipt information for customer order locations, so that if you're doing any kind of back ordering or pre-ordering, that can help support that process within order management. It does only send information for items that are flagged as back orderable. So then moving on to the actual customer fulfillment journeys themselves. The first step, which is pretty common across all the different journeys, is that original order capture. And from a merchandising perspective, a lot of this happens outside of our solution. And that in a lot of ways, we're a bit ambivalent about how the actual order gets captured in the first place. So it could be in a website, it could be mobile, a kiosk, it could be in point of sale, it could be directly through order management, like a call center type order. All of those we would expect to be filtered through order management and to come through once they've been brokered, to determine how it's going to be fulfilled. But before that happens, if there's any kind of money that's captured from the customer, so any kind of payment that the customer makes, particularly this happens if it's an in-store order, I think, then we can capture an order liability that's sent to sales audit and can be booked as a liability to the general ledger. And that gets offset later when the customer order is fulfilled. So then once order management determines how the order will be fulfilled, then that's where it starts to take different paths based on that fulfillment journey. So if you go to the next slide here. Yeah, so here's all of the full set of journeys that are supported within merchandising. So like I mentioned, the ordering channel is not as critical for our solutions. Sometimes you may see this in other presentations from Oracle, where it may show as many as 64 journeys, and that's really because it's multiplied across all the different methods of placing the order. But these are the main journeys that we support within merchandising. So sourcing from one location, fulfilling from another. If the two locations are the same, then that means the inventory is already in the fulfillment location. And the order completion method that are supported are either pick up in store or ship to customer. So I'll talk about a couple of these specifically, walk through some of the steps in it, just to try to help you understand how merchandising takes this in and how things are updated when those occur. I've just selected 3 of what I think are the more common journeys, but have some references at the end of the presentation where you can find details on all of them. But I think this should give a good grounding in the overall process. So the first one is source and fulfill from warehouse for shipment. So this would be shipping from the warehouse directly to the customer. So the order would again start in order management because that is where they've determined what is brokered, where the order should be brokered. Another thing I think that's important to point out is the customer order, as the customer places it, could potentially be fulfilled from multiple locations. So that's another function of order management. It may split it out into multiple, what we sometimes refer to as fulfillment requests. So each fulfillment request would have a unique sourcing and fulfilling location combination, but they may all roll up under the same customer order. So I'm really talking at that individual fulfillment order level here. So the first step here again is that the order is sent from order management to merchandising. Merchandising would create a customer order transfer, and that's what reserves the inventory at the warehouse. And the transfer is created from the warehouse to the virtual store location where that is sent from in the message from the order management solution. Once the warehouse has picked and packed the order, it's sent to the customer, and the warehouse would send a confirmation of the shipment to merchandising and order management. Order management uses that to notify the customer, and merchandising, when it receives the order shipment notification, will both ship and receive the transfer into that virtual store location, and then it sits there waiting for a sale transaction to clear it from inventory. And that occurs when order management sends the order completion transaction to sales audit for that non-stock holding store. It uses the fulfillment details in the message to send the details on to merchandising then to process the sale. That also could be where the liability is offset if there was an original liability captured. So in terms of the sale and how that's processed, that is based on the system option I mentioned earlier. So it's either going to be booked against that non-stock holding store, or if the order was originally placed in a physical store that is different, and you have the system option set to book the sale against the ordering location, then the sale goes against the ordering location, and a virtual book transfer transactions are recorded to account for that difference. All right, then the next scenario is where the warehouse is going to ship it to a physical store, and then the customer is going to pick it up. So this is one that we sometimes refer to as a two-legged customer order fulfillment, like I mentioned earlier. So it starts again in the same place. Order management has brokered the order and determined that's how it's going to be fulfilled. They'll send the fulfillment request to merchandising, and again, a customer order transfer is created, and that's how the inventory is reserved at the warehouse for that order. Then the warehouse is responsible for executing on that shipment to the store. Once it ships, the warehouse would notify merchandising and order management and SIOX in this case that the transfer is coming. And then when it gets to the store will receive it. At that point, merchandising would reserve the inventory in the store, again, based on that system option I mentioned earlier. And so now it's sitting in reserved status at the store waiting for the customer to come pick it up. One thing that sometimes is maybe slightly confusing is when an item is in a physical store and reserved for a customer order, it will be sitting in the customer order reserved bucket on our item log stock on hand table. Whereas if it's reserved for the warehouse movement to the customer, it's going to be shown as transfer reserved in the warehouse, like other transfers. So just something to be aware of. Okay, can we go to the next slide? The second half. Thank you. So now then once it arrives in the store will do whatever they need to make sure it's ready for the customer. It may just be notifying order management that they got it as part of that receipt. And order management would notify the customer that their order was ready for pickup. Customer will go into the store and go to the point of sale terminal. Point of sale would validate that the order was still in a status that made it eligible for pickup, so it hadn't been canceled, and then would process that pickup, which triggers a pickup complete transaction from point of sale to sales audit. They also send a pickup complete transaction to order management at that point. And then from there, the processing is similar. We would clear the sales at the physical store location as part of processing the sale in merchandising. And then if there was a flag that said to credit a different store, then there would be a virtual transfer and the sale would be credited at the other store. Otherwise, it would be credited at the physical store location as the fulfilling location. And then the last one that I was wanting to use as an example is when the order is going to be fulfilled from the store and shipping to the customer from the store. So again, the process starts with order management sending the fulfillment request. In this case, it sends it to both merchandising and SIOX. Merchandising for this type of scenario really only does the reservation at this point. And again, that goes into the customer order reserve, the customer reserve bucket on item of stock on hand. And then most of the processing is happening in the store via SIOX after that. So SIOX would pick the order. They can send updates throughout the picking process. And then they will notify order management that the order has shipped once they've shipped it. Merchandising does not get an update at this point. We will just hold and wait until the sale process comes through. So once order management is notified that it's shipped, they will notify the customer and then send the order complete transaction to sales audit, just like the other warehouse shipment that we talked about. And sales audit would notify merchandising that the shipment occurred so that we can clear the on hand at the store and the customer reserved at the same time. So this one I think is important to call out. It's because there's no transfer involved in this. It's just a reservation. And then when merchandising sees that the physical store that fulfilled that order, we know to both decrement the on hand as well as the customer reserve bucket at that point. And again, that system option about who gets credit for the sale would come into play in this transaction. On the return side, this is a list of the journeys that are supported. Some of these are just kind of your standard in-store return process, but I wanted to call out a couple of them that are related to the warehouse or related to, I guess what's not listed here, which is a customer refund or a return that doesn't have any inventory associated to it. So first, let's talk about the return to the warehouse process. Sometimes we talk about two different types of returns to the warehouse. There can be a return where the warehouse already knows that it's coming and has the details about what to expect, or there could be what we call a blind return. This is a little bit simpler process and maybe more common for a lot of retailers. So I thought we could walk through this one. So in this case, the customer is just going to send their return back to the warehouse without pre-notifying the retailer that it's coming. So using the paperwork they would have gotten with the order. The warehouse would process the return and then send the details of the return to order management. But at this point in time, there isn't actually an update to merchandising. based on that warehouse return. I think this is an important point to call out, that the warehouse, we want to make sure whatever transaction is happening in the warehouse does not get communicated to RMS at this point. Within what we talked about last week with the Logfire or WMS cloud integration, we have a specific process that's documented on how that works with our solution, which might be helpful as a reference point as well. So how merchandising does get notified is through order management and through the sales upload process into sales audit. So order management would tell us that an item was returned and indicate which warehouse it came into, and then what the returning store is, which would be generally the non-stock holding store. Merchandising would process that as a return into the store, and then we do a book transfer to move the inventory back to the warehouse to true it up with what's physically in the warehouse. You can also designate an unavailable status. So if the warehouse is told order management, or maybe just as a standard process, there's a unavailable status that returned items get returned into, then that can also be sent as part of the return transaction, and merchandising can automatically move that to unavailable status as part of that book transfer. There is also the system option I mentioned before for return. So if that's flagged to be returned against the original store, and we would need to have that information being passed to us from order management. That's part of the sales file that they can send. And if that's sent, and that's how the system option is set, then the return will actually go against the original store location. And again, book transfers help true up all the inventory on the back end. And then the last return scenario that I'll walk through is what we call a no inventory return, or when the customer is maybe just being refunded. So this might happen if an item was, thoroughly damaged, or maybe for perishable goods where the retailer doesn't want the actual inventory back, but they're going to give the customer a refund. So in this case, the expectation, of course, is that the customer would reach out to the retailer, and the refund gets processed through order management. Order management would send a return transaction to merchandising against a warehouse location. So that is something that would be configured within order management to say which warehouse would be used in this situation. And then the return would be processed against the non-stock holding store, and inventory moved into the warehouse and then written off using a specific reason code for that inventory adjustment. And that is something that can be configured, which reason code you want to use for that type of adjustment. We only support no inventory returns against warehouse locations. So that's why the warehouse is important as part of this overall process. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch a little bit on how all these concepts that I just walked through work with some of our other Oracle retail solutions. So what I just talked about is really mostly merchandising functionality, although I did use SIOX quite a bit. SIOX and merchandising are very closely integrated on all these journeys. So really all of the store related journeys that I mentioned are supported between merchandising and SIOX. We also have support for a subset of the journeys with Oracle Retail Order Management and Order Broker. The journeys that are supported there are ship from store and ship from warehouse, return to warehouse, and then for pre-ordering processes. They also have all the integration from merchandising for foundation data, pricing, and inventory that's supported. However, promotions are not something that order management subscribes to from merchandising at this point, or from Pricing Cloud Service. With XStore, we support integration for all the customer pickup and return transactions that I mentioned. I did put an asterisk here, though, so if we're looking at order management, order broker, XStore, and merchandising all in one implementation, there are some gaps today with how the integration works with order management, order broker, X-Store, and merchandising in that case. Something that we're looking at as a priority roadmap item getting sorted out, but I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. And then lastly, WMS Cloud. So that is also something for all the warehouse journeys that I mentioned that that we have integration supporting those. Okay, and then I'll just pause here, and then we can take some questions. I think we still have time. These are the really helpful documents, and I would highly encourage you to take a look at probably all of them if you haven't already. The first one is a customer journey white paper, which goes through everything in even more detail than I did today across all the journeys that are supported. And that's, you can see the ID number for it on my Oracle support, where you can download that. Also, we have another white paper that specifically talks about the integration that we have with order management and order broker for those supported scenarios. And it also talks about how SIM or SIOX work in with that integration. And then the retail reference library, again, hopefully you already have that. There's a whole section in the retail reference architecture, as well as the retail reference model around the journeys and how we've envisioned them being supported across the various solutions that are needed to make this process happen. So the process models have business process flows related to each of the different journeys. And then in the retail reference architecture is where you can find the details on all the integration points, as well as some kind of process flows that show how the integration, similar to the pictures I have in the slides here, how those integrations work and which specific integrations we're referring to at each of those steps. And then in our GA documentation, we have an X-Store merchandising implementation guide, the WMS merchandising implementation guide, and then just the merchandising implementation guide, all of which have details on components of what we talked about today. The merchandising implementation guide, primarily what you'll look for there is the system options. And actually, I should have mentioned also sales audit here. So the sales audit implementation guide also has a fair number of details around some of the components within sales audit that are used as part of this process. So the item level status of ORI and ORD, and some of the other things that it does around customer ordering. So also worth taking a look at that.
Thanks, Amy. It looks like Chad did a great job of staying on top of the questions. I do see one here is how are the new flags for sales recognition used?
So like I mentioned that if you've set the system option to say that you want to credit the order placement location for a sale of for a customer order sale, then instead of recording the sale against the order fulfillment location, so maybe it'd be easier if I give specific examples. So let's say an order is placed on the website. So the non-stock holding store is considered the order placement location, and then it's fulfilled from a physical store. In that case, when we process the sale data coming in on that store's RT log, we're going to see that it was a customer order fulfillment and look at the system option. And if the system option is set to order location, we're going to actually record the sale in Tran data against the non-stock holding store. And we're going to decrement the inventory at the physical store. And then we're going to use a book transfer Tran data recordings to true out the difference between the two to get the inventory units sorted. Similar on returns.
Got it. Thank you.
And in the white paper, the first white paper listed there, it goes through this very specific details of all of the different combinations that could occur and how they'd be recorded.
Amy, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for participating today, and hope it was useful content.